Fungi, to some a delicious or despised addition to various culinary adventures, often represented by the button mushrooms found in many grocery stores. To others, a mystical source of inspiration for visual art, music, or stories about the fairy realm. No matter how you see fungi, from an ecological perspective, these fascinating organisms play a variety of vital roles in ecosystems all over the world. To learn a little bit more about these essential organisms, I headed out into the coastal temperate rainforest around the Bamfield Marine Sciences Center to meet up with Daniel Zayonc, one of my closest friends, a self-proclaimed fungophile and all-around fun guy.
Hey Dan!
Hi Owen!
In this first video of a two-part series, Dan introduces me to some of the main groups of fungi in the coastal temperate rainforest, highlighting the diverse morphologies and relationships between fungi and other organisms in this ecosystem.
So here we have two russulas. They're part of the phylum Basidiomycota. They bear their spores on basidia growing off of these gills here. And you can look at those gills and you can think, okay, they kind of look like dishes in a dish rack. But they could also bear spores on teeth that kind of come down, pores. There's a number of different morphologies to basidiomycetes. But here we've got a stipe, some people might call it a stem or a stalk, a cap, and the cap has gills on there. And then underneath you would imagine that you've got that mycelial network growing around and connecting with the trees around it, and maybe even communicated with this mushroom over here. Hey, how's it going? Hey there, we got an orange peel fungus here. So this is part of the phylum which involves ascomycetes, which is different than the phylum involving basidiomycetes. So this mushroom here growing in its kind of typical environment, kind of a compact trail or road environment, it produces spores that are more accessible to the outer environment. And so what kind of happens here is that a raindrop might fall on this ascomycete. You can imagine other ascomycetes being morels, but this orange peel fungus, when the rainwater hits it, it's going to release the spores out in that way. And so it's this other kind of method of spore dispersal that is important and kind of typical of ascomycetes. So something's been munching on this mushroom. I think it's some sort of russula, maybe Lactarius, but a lot of animals do eat mushrooms, not just humans. I've seen squirrels eating them. Often you see slugs or other critters munching on a mushroom. And some people believe that it could be involved for long distance spore dispersal. This mushroom has let out a lot of spores just as it is there, but a lot of those spores do land locally. So who knows, maybe these animals that are eating mushrooms are helping with dispersal, like fruits and berries add to long distance dispersal of plants.
Like animals, all fungi are heterotrophs, getting food by absorbing nutrients rather than photosynthesizing like plants. However, while a few fungi are carnivorous, most receive nutrients via one of three other mechanisms. A vast diversity of fungi are in a mutually beneficial symbiotic relationship with plants via the plant's roots, known as a mycorrhizal symbiosis. The fungus receives nutrients produced by plant photosynthesis, and in return helps the plant take in water and minerals from the soil. 94% of vascular plants have fungi associated with their roots in this way. The second mechanism involves decomposition. These fungi are referred to as saprotrophs, obtaining nutrients by digesting decaying organic material, playing the vitally important role of decomposers in ecosystems. The third mechanism involves parasitic symbiotic relationships, with fungi acquiring nutrients by parasitizing living hosts, which might include plants, animals, or even other fungi.
So here we have a club or a coral fungus. There's a crazy amount of different morphologies, colors, sizes in general mushrooms, but club and coral funguses for sure. So identification is often difficult. but they're pretty cool to look at. You might expect this in a tropical reef rather than the forest floor, but a fun, pleasant surprise to see on a forest walk nonetheless. So you may notice that this tree here is dead. You might think that because I'm on it. But another way to actually tell if a tree is dead is seeing if it's growing conchs on it. So these conchs here, they're one of the major decomposers of dead conifers in our forest. They play a very important role in nutrient cycling after a tree dies. So when they've got these conchs growing on them, it means that they're dead. They always grow parallel with the ground, okay? So this one's growing this way, but before it grew this way. While this tree was alive, well, not alive, but had recently died, it was growing 1, 2, 3, 4 years or so in this direction with it straight up and down, and then it fell and it grew 1, 2, 3, 4 other years after having been cut down. So if you're some sort of inspector of forests, you could actually look at a tree like this and look at the conchs growing on it and have an idea whether, you know, there was a windstorm that hit recently or how old a tree was when it died based on the growing rings of a conch.
Conchs are some of the most prolific spore producers, with large conchs releasing an estimated 30 billion spores per day over a 6-month period.
So here we have some species of Amanita, and you can tell it's an Amanita because underneath you've got a universal veil. So sometimes around this time of year you'll see what look like little snowmen, snow people if you will, coming out of the forest floor. And then they break apart and then they've got your classic toadstool on top. So this veil used to be on top of the entire mushroom, creating somewhat of a snowman. And then the mushroom fruiting body breaks through, and often on the top of the cap, they're the remnants of that universal veil. So when you think of your classic toadstool, it normally has those kind of warty bits at the top. Amanita muscaria, the fly agaric mushroom, is your classic one, the red with the white spots on top. But Amanita phalloides, the death cap mushroom, is also part of this group. So there are edible amanitas, but you want to be especially careful with amanitas because there are some out there that could kill you.
This tree has a few different species of lichen growing on it, and lichen actually involve funguses as well. So the lichen organism is actually a combination of a few different organisms in one structure. The main structure that we see is indeed a fungus, and that fungus is providing a structure or a house for the things that live inside. Those things that live inside could be either algae or cyanobacteria, which are both photosynthetic. So in this symbiotic relationship, the algae photosynthesizes, producing sugar for the fungus, and in return, the fungus is providing a home or a structure so that the algae can live outside of an aquatic environment. Lichen come in all kinds of diverse shapes and sizes, which are actually influenced by the algae living inside the fungus. Next week, in part 2 of our fungus hunt, Dan teaches me how to harvest mushrooms, gives me a few more tips on how to identify some local fungi, and I take a few species back to the lab to make spore prints. Just a couple of fun guys looking for fun guys.
Oh, that's wrong. We're fun guys, but they're not fun guys. It's fungi or fungi for those that pronounce it wrong. So russulas are brittle. They break easily. And this one's a bit wet and mushy now, so not the greatest example, but you can imagine how it breaks pretty easily and often quite loudly.
action.
So you may notice that this tree here is dead. You might think that because I'm on it.